Alex North was, of course, a very revered composer. He had done a number of ballets and was becoming known for scoring stage productions, and had done a good amount of stage work during the mid and late 40s. And among them was Death of a Salesman for Elia Kazan. And he had actually originally met Elia Kazan back in 1937. But it wasn't until the stage production of Death of a Salesman where they really became close friends. And after having directed the New York stage production of Streetcar, Kazan felt so strongly that North should be brought in. He urged Warner Brothers to bring the composer to Hollywood, and of course ultimately succeeded in that. Warner Brothers went along with Kazan's idea, and that began the whole project. When he scored Spartacus, he spent a year on that project. That's absolutely unheard of today, but the amount of time that was afforded back then was considerably different from what is allowed today. And so on A Streetcar Named Desire, he was afforded the opportunity of going to New Orleans and really kind of allowing the whole musical culture of the location to infuse itself into him. And the score that resulted really became one of the absolute landmark scores of all time. It broke so much ground, bringing together two kind of stylistic personalities of both jazz and classical, but expressing them in a dramatic amalgam that was really unprecedented.
You must be Stanley. I'm Blanche.
And so, even though A Streetcar Named Desire is often, kind of known and thought of as a jazz score, it wasn't truly the case, because even though it drew upon the rhythmic and harmonic styles and aspects of jazz, it wasn't true jazz because there was an overly written aspect to it, and was adapted into an orchestral setting, and of course featuring jazz soloists, but it resulted in what he referred to more as simulated jazz than an outright jazz score.
Thank you.
And in doing that, he really kind of created a whole new approach to film scoring. The main title is just so astoundingly powerful. He enters with his two-note introduction to his main theme. It introduced the jazz elements and the symphonic, and in a lot of ways was just the central piece. It was his main theme, so it was from where the rest of the score grew. With aspects of it put through innumerable permutations, but it all emanated from the main theme, where he would go so far as to say, if it's not in some way tied to the main theme, what's it doing there? And then for his implementation of his various themes, which were, in the case of A Streetcar Named Desire, not constructed, he always pointed out, they were not constructed as character themes, but they were mental statements. They were musical portraits of the psychological state of the characters, but it was the interrelationships of the characters, how they affected each other, that governed North's scoring approach.
Will you have a drink?
No, ma'am. No, thank you. I can't drink on the job.
He adapted and wove in this French polka called Varsuviana that spoke to the Vivien Leigh character and her remembrances, recollections of her husband's suicide, and then the polka was treated in such a way that it alluded to her increasingly thin grasp on reality and her decaying mental state.
Wait. Shot.
Another important aspect of the score, of course, is the music that Alex wrote to evoke Belle Reve, which is, of course, the family home where Blanche and Stella grew up, which has now been lost. And through the course of the film, in never seeing the home and never seeing Belle Reve, its personality, so to speak, or its essence is conveyed musically And that's the only way it's conveyed.
Approach me, Stella. I know that you're bound to reproach me, but before you do, take into consideration you left. I stayed and struggled. You came to New Orleans and look out for yourself. I stayed at Belle Reve and tried to hold it together. Oh, I'm not meaning this in any reproach.
So, short of having a visual of it, the utter existence of Belle Reve is entirely a figment of Alex North's score, and again, an example of the mental state, and it's the memories of Belle Reve that Blanche holds, certainly romanticized memories. So, in fact, it is not even necessarily the Belle Reve that actually existed, but it is the Belle Reve that Blanche remembers. I got to know Alex over the last couple years of his life. I met him in 1989. He passed away in 1991, but we grew to be quite close friends. And it was a really wonderful time in that it afforded me the opportunity of meeting an absolute musical icon. And, it kind of became clear to me that it was good for him, too, to see in someone so young, an absolute devotion to his work, and to sense from me the enormous respect I held for him. And one day I raised, the topic that everyone was kind of scared, essentially, to bring up with Alex, and that was his score for 2001, A Space Odyssey. And it is one of the most infamous stories in all of film music, where his score was not, in fact, used in the final cut of the film. Kubrick ended up going with his, pre-existing temp track of classical music. And so the whole notion of kind of beginning a recording series of new recordings of scores of his from the past, she liked the concept of very much. And it was in relation to 2001 where I initially suggested Jerry Goldsmith to be the conductor, to which, Alex responded, "Oh, absolutely." Jerry and Alex had been very good friends for many years. And so after we had recorded 2001, A Streetcar Named Desire just seemed the natural second act, so to speak. And so that was the project that ultimately I started putting together and working with Jerry to arrange a schedule where we could again go off to London and record Alex's score with the National Philharmonic Orchestra of London, and we recorded at Whitfield Street Recording Studios in 1995. And then it was just, so extraordinarily exciting to release for the first time so many cues that were not part of the original release, and then, treat them all to just a wonderful performance with the great musicians in London. It's without a doubt one of the most influential scores there's ever been, and the effect that North's music has had even on other landmark and historic works, from West Side Story and The Man with the Golden Arm and Chinatown, other truly groundbreaking and landmark works. So much ends up having a root in some sense to the streetcar score. It's impossible to overstate how strong an effect he had on film music that came after.